Welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen. Today, once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, specifically the beginning of it. So it's very exciting. Khenser Geshe Wandak was thrilled that we were, right before he passed away, going back to the beginning of this text and looking at through the eyes of folks who had spent 10 years with him on it, going through it page by page. And being able to have a much clearer understanding than we did the 10 years before. So now we're going back to the beginning and seeing how we can apply what we've learned to the beginning of it again. And Rinpoche always said to circle this text over and over and over again. So before we get started, let's do what we always do and get into a posture that sets a specific intention. Telling us that we're doing what we're doing right now in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we start with setting up a physical posture that will allow for our mind to have clarity. The 7-point Vairakana posture is a suggested posture. We put our legs into a cross-legged fashion. If we can get them into the full Vajra posture, that's best. But we do whatever we can physically, even if that means we put them on the ground and sit in a chair. Whatever our physical limitations are, we respect those. But if we can get into this position, the more strict we can be about it, the more clarity our mind will have. But the texts say if we physically can't do it, our mind won't lose clarity if we aren't in this posture because of some sort of physical limitation. So we get into this posture with our legs as best as we can. We put our hands on our lap with our right on top of our left with our thumbs touching in a diamond posture or in a diamond kind of look position. We have our back very straight, vertebrae like a stack of coins, as we say, shoulders in a comfortable position, allowing for our arms to kind of bow out, head slightly tilted forward, eyes slightly open at a 45-degree angle, kind of looking at our nose. Eventually, that whole perception will disappear because we're focused only on our mental consciousness. And then we put our mouths into a comfortable position with our tongue behind our teeth on the roof of our mouth. And we breathe through our nose. So sometimes they add that 8th point to the 7-point Vairakana posture of breathing through your nose. And this will also, the tongue on the top of the roof allows for the mouth to not get dry, for it to circulate, and for it not to get overfilled with water. So you combine that with the breathing through the nose and you accomplish those 2 feats of not having a dry mouth or having an overly salivated up mouth. So we're going to begin with that posture to get our minds as clear as we possibly can, as the Sangha says in the beginning as Lama Tsongkhapa says, the Sangha says, when we look at the beginning of the Lam Rim Chemo and the 6 preparation section. So we're in this posture and we're going to begin breathing in and out through our nose, bringing the breath all the way to the top, meaning if we can breathe in as deeply as we can, even into our diaphragm. As we breathe in, we see our stomach extend out. If we're breathing into our diaphragm, and then as we exhale, our stomach actually shrinks. So we're not trying to force that. We're trying to do very even breaths, but we're trying to do them in a very full way. We don't want to feel as though we're drowning. We want to be very comfortable. We don't want it to be forced breathing in very quickly. We're going to do it in a very even fashion, but following all the way to the top, as I say, and then as many teachers also say, and then all the way out. And as we do that on the exhale, or whichever's better for you, at the end of the exhale, at the beginning of the exhale, count 1. And the reason we're doing that is we want to make sure that our mind is on the breath. And if there's a marker on the breath, such as counting, this allows us to have the introspection spy in our mind looking to see if those numbers are still running or if our mind is running somewhere else. The mindfulness tells us that we're only focusing on the breath and we're checking how many we are doing in a row without being distracted. And the introspection, the spy in our mind, is checking to make sure that that's what we're doing and only what we're doing. So we begin by meditating on the breath, and then we're going to add the visualization of Buddha Shakyamuni in just a very short moment in order to increase the merit of the calming of our mind. So we're calming our mind to get rid of any distractions that we may have brought in the door with us, any attachments or hatreds that we're chasing after, and that we're creating stories of in our head. And we're bringing it to a neutral place, and then visualizing something single pointedly of virtue. And then we'll begin to set our motivation and understanding of the Four Noble Truths and so forth that will be necessary for us to become Buddhas. Okay, so we'll focus on the breath for a moment. Now, as we're breathing in and out, add in the front generation form Buddha Shakyamuni, about 2 feet away, eye height, about 2 inches tall, about the size of our thumb, with radiance, a light body, 3-dimensional, a real being, but not a being like us with blood, guts, and bones, a being that's pure, the most beautiful form you can imagine, a Buddha Shakyamuni, with the most beautiful robes you can imagine. Now we're breathing in and out and visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni. We're so fortunate to be able to think of such a great being who has excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. An excellent being who stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. And it's that truth that drew many of us to Buddhism, our dissatisfaction, our own pain. Think about the various forms of suffering: birth, aging, sickness, and death, meeting with the unpleasant, being separated from what's pleasant, not getting what you want, and being forced into a set of aggregates, a body and a mind. It's a basis for all of these forms of suffering. Think about these individual types of suffering and how they relate to your life. Birth, aging, sickness, death. Think about the 3 types of suffering. That outward pain that we experience, everyone knows about the mental pain, the physical pain that we have to experience: depression, anxiety, stress. We don't choose these things. We don't ever wake up and say, I want anxiety, pain, stress. Yet we have them. Do we need to? Think about the happiness that we chase after that always lets us down or turns into a form of suffering because of impermanence. See how these things that we've chased have made us think that our state is good, and that once we get those things, we'll be happier and we'll be happiest, only to find out that they cause us suffering and pain. Buddha said it's like bait that causes us to come for again and again and again, like stupid animals that don't realize they're being trapped. this contaminated happiness that we seek, the pervasive compounded suffering that forces us again and again and again into a set of aggregates, into a set of parts, into a form or a formless being that will have to suffer, that will be thrown again and again and again from the high to the low and the low to the high in the 6 realms of cyclic existence. A being experiencing the highest God realm, only pleasure, not knowing pain, will be forced into a hell realm. And we recognize that this is our situation. This pervasive compounded suffering is the real superior truth of suffering. The 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, the other 2 types of suffering among the 3, all get to happen because of this pervasive compounded suffering. This suffering that's driven by our karma and afflictions that throws us into a set of aggregates of suffering, contaminated aggregates again and again and again, beyond our control. We have no control over it. So the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. And many of us know what that is and are so dissatisfied with it that we came to a Buddhist class and we looked at so many different books to figure out what we would do or what we could do to get out of that situation. And we found out that the Buddha stated that then this is the superior truth of origin. And Buddha stated that this superior truth of suffering is a result, and all results have causes, and that the cause of this particular result, when we looked very closely, was an ignorance that grasped at the self as being truly established. And Buddha stated that in dependence upon that, I had inappropriate mental conduct. I thought inappropriately. And then afflictions arise, such as attachment, hatred, and ignorance. And then my actions are contaminated. And as a result of that, I have cyclic existence. I have the truth of suffering. So the Buddha diagnosed, said, this is what causes, you have the sickness, you have a suffering person, and this is why. And then the Buddha said something very delightful. The Buddha stated that we can end all of this. All of this suffering is unnecessary. All of this suffering is impermanent. All impermanent things have causes. If you get rid of the cause, then there's no longer the result. And the Buddha said that if you can do that, you, like myself, can be free too. So the Buddha was somebody who had the experience of it. The Buddha wasn't somebody who was theorizing. The Buddha was somebody who already experienced the cessation of suffering. And because he realized other things about the path, was able to achieve complete bliss and omniscience. So this kind of reliable being is the kind of being that's telling us this. This isn't somebody theorizing. This is somebody who's experiencing this and has experienced this as a result of a path that they relied upon. So then the Buddha stated, this is the superior truth of path. This is the path that I relied upon. This is the path that beings who see emptiness, beings who have a direct understanding of the nature of reality practice. This is what we do in order to gain an antidote to the truth of origin, which causes the truth of suffering. And the Buddha is very clear on what we would need to do in order to eradicate the suffering that we don't want to experience by getting rid of what causes it. And the Buddha said, if you do all that, you can achieve the position that I'm in, and that's a freedom from suffering, a freedom from fear altogether. And then the Buddha stated that if you wanted more than just a freedom from suffering and a freedom from fear, if you wanted a complete bliss and you wanted to be useful to all beings, you had to think about them more than yourself. So we start to think about other sentient beings. We start to think about our loved ones, and we do the same exact meditation about them that we did about ourselves. And we recognize that they can be born into the 6 realms of cyclic existence, and they can have a hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, or God realm rebirth, and any among those 6 realms of cyclic existence rebirth that they experience, like ourselves, will be plagued with suffering because they are contaminated, because they are cyclic existence. So we use the meditation that we did on ourselves and the different 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering that contain all of those to understand the situation that other sentient beings are in, and then start to want to see them like yourself be free from suffering and have this bliss, this happiness that the Buddha has, and the Buddha stated is possible by caring for others. So we start to think about others, because the Buddha said that by thinking about others, we can not only get rid of our suffering based on the Four Noble Truths, but if we put others' needs before our own, if we learn to truly care for each and every sentient being, then we could achieve his or her state, which was a state of bliss and a freedom from suffering. So then we start to, because the Buddha advises to look at other sentient beings, we look at our friends, we look at our neutrals, we look at our enemies, and we recognize the mislabeling of beings when we state that there are enemies, and the mislabeling of beings when we're so attached and say there are only friends, because we recognize since beginningless time, we've had relationships of every kind with each and every one of these sentient beings, and our enemies have been our closest, kindest confidants at times, have taken care of us when no one else would, and we've just forgotten because we can't remember our previous lives. It's the same continuum. So merely this continuum has forgotten about the embodiment, its previous embodiment, and its previous relationships in that embodiment. And that ignorance is blinding me, and seeing you who are, maybe having just a tough moment because you are under the influence of your karma and afflictions, and you're reacting in a way because I've made it possible for you to do, because my karma and afflictions, I don't see this as the momentary nature that it is. I see this as a fixated, permanent nature that you have when there is no such thing, because you've been kinder to me, maybe, than the kindest people in my life right now that I'm meditated first on as friends. So we see the incompatibility with logic when we start to think about whether this person's an enemy or not, and whether I'm more important than them or not. I have Buddha nature, they have Buddha nature, and we start to right-size that relationship and start to think the following. We start to think how nice it would be if all of sentient beings could have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and the causes of happiness. I will make them have causes of, I will be a cause for their happiness and the causes of happiness. May all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to have the strength to be able to give sentient beings happiness. And then we think, oh, how nice it would be if all sentient beings could be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I'll be a cause for them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, please bless me to be able to do so, have the courage to be able to do that. Now we have confidence. We know there's a pathway out of suffering. We want to help others be free from suffering, and you know that they don't all have a path. They haven't all been presented with the truth, and you have. So you say, I'm going to take it upon myself, the task of freeing them all. And then once you analyze your own mind and you recognize what the Buddha has to offer, you see that you're quite incapable of truly helping all sentient beings. And that the only being who is truly reliable and can truly do that, because you've established him or her as reliable in the beginning stages of the path, is Buddha. So you have this incontrovertible idea that Buddha is the most reliable being. So when you get to this stage and you want to take on the task of freeing all sentient beings, you realize you're not a Buddha. And the most reliable guide for all sentient beings is a Buddha. And you recognize, I must become a Buddha for the sake of myself and for the sake of all sentient beings. So you've first recognized in the stages of the path you're in common with beings of small and medium capacity that you must get out of cyclic existence for yourself. And then you up the ante and say, I want to become a Buddha, which does get you out of cyclic existence. So it does fulfill that need of yours, but it actually fulfills even more needs, because by caring for others, it allows you to get rid of the obstructions to omniscience. And by having obstructions to omniscience, you are blocked from bliss. So by getting rid of the obstructions to omniscience, you can have bliss. So you recognize then this great potential that you have, and the only way you can reach it is by becoming a Buddha. So you say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So really, really strongly think this thought, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And then everything that we do forward from here on out, may it be for the sake of becoming a Buddha, for the sake of all sentient beings, not only at this teaching. When we leave this teaching, may everything that we do be for the purpose of becoming a Buddha, for the sake of all sentient beings. And when we look at how that will be accomplished, we recognize that we have to modify our behavior and learn how to modify our behavior. So how do we do that? We do that by learning. We do that by gaining the wisdom arisen from hearing, contemplation, or analysis and meditation. So in order to do that, we have to be presented with the Dharma. We have to engage in aspirations and do the prayers of the Dharma, and then analyze the Dharma, and then integrate it into our lives without having to use signs and reasoning, because it's saturated our mind from the wisdom arisen from meditation. So we have to go through all these stages and say, oh, it's so wonderful. We're here on a Sunday, and we're engaging in those stages. We're engaging in that which will be a cause for us to become a Buddha. So we should rejoice in that. We have a human basis that has the ability to traverse these stages, that has the ability to become a Buddha in this lifetime. Milarepa did it. And we see other saints and holy beings who've been able to achieve great feats in this one lifetime with this very same human basis, with these very same teachings, with this mental consciousness that is not truly established and also has this Buddha nature that can mature. The proliferating Buddha nature. So we're very, very happy that we have that, and we know that we can become Buddhas. So we say that may we become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. May we recite this Heart Sutra for the sake of all sentient beings, and think about the meaning, the implicit and explicit meanings of the Heart Sutra, of the path of accumulation, the path of preparation and seeing, meditation and no more learning, for the sake of all sentient beings, that we're making a mandala offering for the sake of all sentient beings. We're going for refuge so that we become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So it's very important that we think of two things. We want to become a Buddha, A, and why? What's the reasoning? It's for the sake of all sentient beings. This is we're thinking, we're doing this for. So we have these two thoughts in mind when we're going about everything in life. And the more and more and more those two thoughts, right, becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, saturate our mind, the more we will only accumulate virtue. Because we know that's how we become a Buddha. And the may part is our aspiration, and our aspiration and our wish becomes stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where it turns into a real bodhicitta, and we become a bodhisattva, and we only do things for the sake of all sentient beings. And even when we're distracted, we're creating virtue, which will be a cause for our Buddhahood. So we see the power of this idea of becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, having our mind be able to saturate with it and turning into a bodhisattva. With that in mind, imagine that all sentient, imagine that all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas are in the space in front of you. Imagine that in the center, you see all of our kind lamas. You see Khenser Geshe Wandak with that wonderful smile, maybe giggling. He's seeing us all here and happy. You see His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Any other high lamas or kind lamas, holy beings that you imagine in the space in front of you that would be so happy that you're participating in this teaching today. Beings like Demalocha Rinpoche and Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Geshe Aga and Geshe Ma Tenzin Lajinla and Geshe Sopa and Geshe Zopa and all of these kind beings. Imagine them there in the space in front of you, the profound view lineage beings, the extensive deeds lineage beings, all of the great Tibetan masters, all of the American masters. Imagine them all in the space in front of you. And those holy beings are so happy that you're here doing something virtuous. They don't get to witness something so wonderful that often in our lives. And here they are witnessing us doing that. So they're so happy. And imagine them all in the space in front of us. And imagine that all sentient beings are assembled all around us. We can imagine that we've taken each and every one of them here by the hand. Imagine that we have infinite numbers of hands grabbing infinite beings and pulling them into this teaching. And imagine that they're all assembled around us. And now all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas become completely filled with bliss because they see all sentient beings here. Their whole goal of being is to be able to free sentient beings from suffering and bring them to a state of bliss, bring them to a state of Buddhahood. Their whole goal, however they have to go about doing that, is to bring sentient beings to that state. And they see all sentient beings at once doing exactly what will cause them to arrive at that state. And they just become so full of bliss that they begin to start to radiate and emanate nectars and light rays in the color of white, red, and blue. So now we imagine that we and all sentient beings that we've led here have a white Om on the top of our crown, a red Ah at our throats, and a blue Hum at our hearts, representing a white Om representing our body, a red Ah representing our speech, and a blue Hum representing our mind. Imagine ourselves and all sentient beings that we've led here all have this exact same, these exact same syllables on their bodies at those places, Om, Ah, Hum, white, red, blue, respectively. So we do imagine all sentient beings, ourselves and all sentient beings in this manner. And now we imagine that this bliss that the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas have because they see all sentient beings here doing what they want them to do, and that is create causes for their infinite happiness and freedom from suffering. Light rays and nectar that are white start to radiate and fall on us like snow, almost like rain, and they turn into ohms. White ohms, and we imagine that they dissolve into our and all sentient beings' crown, into the Om that we have at our crown, and purify our body. Then we imagine red lightweight rays and nectars that are turning into red Ahs, and we imagine they're showering down on us or snowing down on us, and these Ahs are going to our throat and all sentient beings' throat, and purifying all negativities of their speech and our speech. Next, imagine the same exact thing from the bliss that all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have from seeing us all assembled here. Blue light rays and nectar that turn into hums start to shower down on us and go to our and all sentient beings' heart, where there's a blue hum, and imagine that it purifies the mind of our mind and all sentient beings' minds. So we imagine that the white Om purifies the body, the red Ah purifies the speech, and the blue Hum purifies the mind, and not just our mind, all sentient beings' minds. So you imagine as this is going on, that all sentient beings are engaging in these prayers. All sentient beings are thinking about the things that you're thinking about the teachings, and meditating on them deeply. All sentient beings are making a request of a mandala offering to the teacher all the way back to the lineage. All sentient beings are going for refuge and doing so in order to become Buddhas. So just imagine how happy that would make if all sentient beings were simultaneously doing that. How happy that would make Kensur Geshe Wanda, and how happy that would make all of the other holy beings that we can imagine. So hold that visualization, and then we'll start to recite the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity, no purity. There is no decrease, no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as true, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Deyata Om Gade Gade Bharagade Bharazam Gade Bodhisvadyada Om Gade Gade Bharagade Bharazam Gade Bodhisvadyada Om Gade Gade Bharagade Bharazam Gade Bodhisvadyada Om Gade Gade Bharagade Bharazangadi Bodhisvadyada Om Gade Gade Bharagade Bharazangadi Bodhisvadyada. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Aga samara dashandara samaraya mende ada gade gade maragade marazangade bodhi Zwam Bapa Gonjo Zonji Gai Dembe Doji Jil Podoji Mebodoji Shewadoji Dragi Baji Medembeja Danji Jedinga Yezo Girin Donjaji Jewadan Medon Bejen Danje Wadan Domba Joji Bonzon Zonjoji Raji De Jandenda Dele. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Ranamanalagani Radayami. Nanye Jodan Joye Jodan La Janju Badu Danye Jazuji. Dagi Jishe Jibezananji Jola Benji Zanje Jubajo. Zanye Jodan Joye Jodan La Janju Badu Danye Jazuji. Nagi Jishe Jibezananji Jola Benji Zanje Jubajo. Zanye Jodan Joye Jodan La Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Nagi Jije Jibezonaji Rola Benjia Zanye Rubarjo. All phenomena arise from causes. The causes are taught by the Tathagata. The cessation of the causes as well is taught by the great seer. The one who is transformed into a reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings. The teacher, Sugata, and protector to you, I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and the profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble light rays. To you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings hear and understand this teaching in all of their languages. Another Sunday. We all woke up. Oh, thank you so much. What a wonderful occasion. Yeah. So beginning of the Lam Rim Chemo, so wonderful. I've been looking at it quite a bit and just seeing the depth of the information that's in the beginning of it, and how different the experience is each time, and how you see you have these topics. Lama Tsongkhapa gives us this framework. It says here, this is the greatness of the teacher. We first learn about Atisha, but really we're learning about the extensive deeds and the profound view lineage, and how Shakyamuni teaches Maitreya and Shakyamuni teaches Manjushri, and how these lineages go down through all of these Indian pandits and so forth. So we're seeing the author is really everyone who's teaching the truth, right? When we look at the lineage, within that lineage of the specific teaching, it's those beings that express the truth from one person to another in this unbroken way. And you learn this greatness, and you see, oh, how wonderful these authors are, right? And the first time you go through, they're just a bunch of names. The second time you go through, you know who they are. You know some of the things they've said, and you see how significant they are to the teaching and to the path that you're learning. So then you get to the next part, the greatness of the teaching itself. Now you've gone through the Lam Rim once or twice or 3 times or 20 times, and you have a taste for how great it actually is. They're telling you it's great in the beginning, right? It's a sales pitch. The teacher's great, everybody, just so you know, and the teaching's great. And it sounds like that when you first touch the Lam Rim. But then when you go through it again, it starts to saturate you, and you get goosebumps when you think about the teaching. You get goosebumps when you think about the teacher, and you didn't have those the first time you went through the Lam Rim, because you didn't have experience with the teaching. It was just a sales pitch at that point. And then the Lama Tsongkhapa is so skillful. He gets you excited every time. Each time you go back to it, the first time you're a little intrigued. Like, if this stuff's real, if these people really did what you say, this sounds like something I want to learn more about. And then he says, okay, if you do, this is how you need to listen. And if you ever get a chance to teach, this is how you should do it. And it looks like he's just telling you how to teach and how to listen, but he's setting you up for now the next, which is how to lead students in the actual instructions. He's taught you how to listen and teach. Now you're looking at a teacher. You know how they should be teaching. So now you have a little skill already in knowing what the great quality of a teacher should be, because Lama Tsongkhapa just told you, hey, if you ever end up a teacher, you should be like this, and gives you a little broad overview. So now you get to the greatness of the teacher and you start to hone it in, but you already kind of know a little bit enough to start to look for, oh, wow, a teacher should be like this. That teacher's not really like that. Huh, it said when I teach, I should do that. They're not really like that. Now Lama Tsongkhapa says these teachers should have, according to Maitreya and the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, these 10 qualities and so forth, and you should really analyze them. So it all builds on it. So now it's establishing that you need this teacher and establishing that it's the, the root of the path. So Lama Tsongkhapa gives us this kind of buildup of information that gets us to a point where we're ready. If we're a very, very beginner, or we've gone through it once and start to see its significance differently. So now we really, really, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, then have to know what to do with these topics and how to actually lead students in the actual instructions. So he presents a topic, how to rely on the spiritual teacher. First topic, this is the first thing you need. The root of all of your happiness, the root of all your spiritual success is going to be the teacher. It's going to be the right teacher, and not because there's some sort of Lamaism going on here, just because it's common sense. If you want someone to fulfill a job, you go and look at their resume. You find out what qualifications they have. You have a bunch of people talk to them just to make sure you're just not out of your mind crazy and have fallen in love with that person and don't see all of these flaws that they have. You even have other people check. Imagine if we were that, thorough when, putting people in charge of our spiritual monopoly. If we put people in charge of our money, we're very, very thorough. We'll ask a friend, we'll get references, maybe look on Google, how many stars, do they have any bad reviews? What's that one bad review? Because they could be like me, right? We'll really check it all. We'll check it so thoroughly. But when it comes to, looking for a teacher or hearing spiritual things, we'll just take whatever sounds good, whatever makes us feel good at the moment. And we feel like because it felt good at that moment, that must be my plan for success. And when we've done a lot of things that feel good at the moment that we think are the right way, and they were actually our plan for failure. And since beginningless time, we've had a plan for failure. Prove it. I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm not a Buddha. I'm not an Arhat. I have afflictive obstructions. I have obstructions to omniscience. They haven't been gotten rid of. I have attachment, which is proof I'll get a next life. Prove it. Since beginningless time, I have clearly not made the right decisions. I'm here and I have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. So I have to then figure out how to start changing my mind and transforming my mind into a mind that starts to make good decisions. So Lama Tsongkhapa gets us to this point where we see that there's a teacher who is the root of all of our success. And this is how you meditate on it. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, okay, all right, beginners, there's this thing called the 6 preparations. All right, go in your room, clean it up, put some images of enlightenment down, right? And then assemble offerings that are beautiful to those images of enlightenment. Make sure that you got them, honestly, because you're new to Buddhism. Maybe you went out and stole them because you want your altar to be the most beautiful altar to impress the most amount of people. So Lama Tsongkhapa has to even be that basic with us. And that's how he's starting with real beginner practitioners, because he's saying, make sure you don't steal the offerings that you put on there. And if you did steal them, confess that you stole them, and then you can offer them, but don't go about it that way ever if you can help it, So it says, get these offerings, obtain them nicely, arrange them beautifully on this altar that you've set up after you've cleaned, these images of enlightenment, this altar. Then it says, sit down. It says, sit down, get into a position where you can clear your mind, get into, some sort of posture where there's mind clearing. 7-point Vairakana posture is what we begin all of these teachings with. So we're following Lama Tsongkhapa's instruction. We're following Asanga's instruction. Asanga says that this posture should help us clear our mind. And we have to make sure at this point our mind is clear and it's not distracted. So we're doing all of these things just like we do at the beginning of our meditation every week on Thursday and Sunday. We're doing this in the beginning of the Lam Rim Chema. So we're making sure we're in a posture, we're making sure our mind's not distracted. Doing the breathing would be even being part of that if you add the 8th point of breathing, right? It would be getting your mind not distracted, getting your mind clear. So what we do at the beginning of this class is what we would do at that point. So we get into that posture. Then it says, imagine the merit field, all the holy beings in the space in front of you. So we do that, right? All the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, all the holy beings, profound view lineage, extensive deeds lineage, the lineage of blessings. We imagine, everyone we can, the highest yoga tantra deities, the yogic tantra deities, the performance tantra deities, the action tantra deities, all of the protectors and so forth, and the 35 Buddhas, all of these beings we imagine in this merit field, however you can, and whatever merit field visualization that you do. So you imagine this all in the space in front of you. And then you make the 7-limb prayer, which is the 5th. You make a 7-limb prayer, which we went over many times. I won't go over. And then you make a mandala offering and more aspirations for the 6th step. And then you begin to analyze the topic that you've chosen in the specific order that you've chosen it, right? So we said that Lama Tsongkhapa says that pick your topics, make sure you're going to be able to do all those topics. Don't take more topics on than you can do. Don't sit too long in the beginning. Break your meditation sessions down into smaller sessions. But make sure that you know exactly what you're going to do. I'm going to do this meditation like this, and then my central topic's going to be this. And then once you do maybe a glancing meditation over the entire path, then you go back to your topic that you need to focus on, and you tie it tight to your mind, and then you analyze it from every single direction. So we did that with the Lama, right? And there's all these other suggestions within this first chapter, on not the first chapter, but the first section where Lama Tsongkhapa talks about meditation, called the meditation session. And then abandoning misconceptions about meditation comes next. So Lama Tsongkhapa gives us a briefing on what we're supposed to do with these topics. Think about these topics, make sure they saturate your mind, make sure you're not thinking about other things when you're thinking about these topics, and tell your mind what to do. Don't let your mind control you. You decide what your mind's going to do during your meditation, and you do only that. You don't do anything else. So Lama Tsongkhapa is very clear that our mind's been out of control forever. And the whole point of this is getting control of our mind and saturating it with these topics that will be necessary for us to become Buddhas. So that's what we're doing. So we went through and we did this with Guru Devotion. And we realized that we had to analyze topics because in the Refuting Misconceptions About Meditation section in the Lam Rim Chemo, which is the chapter after the meditation session, it shows that analytical meditation is a necessary step in order for us to achieve enlightenment. Just emptying our mind, believing that conceptuality is a negative thing, is actually a wrong view. And we find this in the Hashan view and the Chinese abbot view that's dealt with later, and that Kamalashila deals with when he swoops into Tibet and negates that wrong view, that conceptuality and that analysis actually impedes enlightenment. And Kamalashila and all the great masters show us how you have this conceptuality, you have this analysis, and then you also have your practice of calm abiding and a calming, concentrating meditation. And then eventually you can combine those two and use it like a laser that points at an object of observation. And the object of observation you will have analyzed thoroughly, and you will come to kind of an inferential understanding of it that was able to be achieved through this concentration on that object. So it shows in this chapter that you have to dispel this misconception that analysis isn't critical in order to become a Buddha, because you can't become a Buddha without analysis. You can't see emptiness without analysis. The moment before you see emptiness is an actual state where you have perceived emptiness inferentially. It's not controvertible. And it's from that inferential valid cognition that's not controvertible that you know emptiness is true, and that your calm abiding can then unite with it in such a way that you can have a non-conceptual direct perception of emptiness at the path of seeing. It's basically, later on, it explains all of that and sets all of that up, how that can all occur. But in this section, it starts to give you the foundation for that to be able to happen, so that you aren't spinning your wheels until you get to the later stages. You're starting to understand how to hone your mind in, and how to deal with what the objects of negation are in meditation, and then how to understand what the objects that you're supposed to take on are in meditation. So Lama Tsongkhapa is already setting that up. Get rid of excitement, get rid of laxities, already talking about in these initial stages, talking about the two types of meditation, the fixed meditation, and then the analytical meditation. So he starts to go over that right after the section on relying on the spiritual guide. And then we get into the life of leisure and opportunity, right? The second topic, if we look at it from a topic set, Lama Tsongkhapa gives us a topic, then tells us how we meditate on all the topics, and then gives us the second topic. And that second topic is the human life of leisure and opportunity. A lot of times people blow over this because they're like, yeah, I get it, I'm a human, great. But the point of this meditation is to establish gratitude and establish this idea that you have this jewel, that you are a gem, that you have this opportunity like no other. You have this opportunity that's very, very rare. It's not something that just comes along very often. And it's based upon that then you will develop an urgency when you see that this opportunity that you have is fleeting. If you don't have it established that this opportunity that you have is incredible, then it doesn't set up for this next thing, which creates urgency in your mind. Because if you look over this human basis part of leisure and opportunity, and then you just get into karma, you could say, oh, whatever, I'm going to have a whole bunch of lives, whatever. Yep, karma, I'm going to be born again and again and again and again and again and again. This one, I'll do what I can now, but there's no real urgency. But then when you see how rare it is that you have a human form and you have this gratitude for this humanness that you have, and you know that bodhisattvas in higher realms pray to be born into the position that we're in because it's so ideal. You know that beings in this position that you're in have become enlightened, have ended suffering altogether, and have achieved a state of complete bliss from this position right here. We know that in our teachings on the bodhicitta class, and we know in learning the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that Atisha says that the most ideal position for getting a bodhisattva vow is this human basis, because this human basis can take among the 7 kinds of individual liberation vows, right? So we know that it takes this human basis to have an individual liberation vow that Atisha says is the most incredible basis from which to get a bodhisattva vow. He says you can take bodhisattva vows in some other bases, but this human basis is the most ideal basis from which to take a bodhisattva vow. So we learn that later on, right, in the Lam Rim. So when we get back to this section on the human life of leisure and endowment, we know not only we have this human basis that works real good at becoming enlightened, we know that it's ideal for taking a bodhisattva vow. And we know that it's so rare. It says in Nagarjuna's friendly letter, the letter to a friend, that the Shiting, since it's even more difficult to obtain a human life from an animal life than for a turtle's head to enter the aperture of a yoke floating upon the great ocean. O Lord, O King of humankind, make this life fruitful by practicing the sublime teaching. One who is born a human and then becomes involved in wrongdoing is even more foolish than one who fills a golden vessel adorned with jewels with vomit. So Nagarjuna isn't pulling any punches there. He's saying that you have this vessel, this golden vessel, that you could have, full of jewels, right? If your mind could be full of jewels, or your mind could be dirty and full of like a septic system. A very, very common saying in Tibetan that they don't tell the Westerners very much is Serbu Nanjapa. That's a golden pot full of shit, right? Are we a golden pot full of jewels when we look at our mind? Our human basis we have is a golden pot from which we can become Buddhas, right? What's it full of? What is this basis full of? Our mind is what, inhabits this basis. What is our mind full of? Is it full of precious jewels or is it full of feces and sewage? Does it look like on the outside that we're doing what we should, but really on the inside, we're cunning and awful? We ourselves are the only ones who know that. So this human basis that we have gives us the opportunity to do everything. And if we don't take advantage of it, then we don't know when we're going to have this opportunity again. We've met with the Dharma. We have this life of leisure. We don't need to go through the 8 and the 10. We went through them last week, but we know that what does this 8 leisures mean? It means that we're free from leisureless states. Those 8 things which we could have where you couldn't practice Dharma, we're free from that. We don't have that. It says that, we have this human basis. And when we look at the opportunities that we have in terms of the opportunity, the internal opportunity and the external opportunities, we can logically say that we have the majority of them, if not all of them, when we look at those 10 right at this moment. So we have to reflect on it. It says, reflect on this life of leisure and from many perspectives, and it'll greatly affect your mind. And it says, therefore, contemplate as instructed above. If you cannot do this, condense this material into 3 topics: what the life of leisure and opportunity is, how it's important in terms of temporary and final goals, and how difficult it is obtained in terms of its causes and its effects. So Rinpoche so many times went over the difficulty of achieving the human basis in terms of numbers. The number of humans are much, much lower than the number of lower realm beings. It just gets greater and greater and greater. And it says in Arya Deva's 400 verses that beings, for the most part, are always involved with ignoble things, non-virtues. So most beings just go to the lower realms. In the sutras, we see that the number of beings that go from the higher realms to the lower realms is fill the atoms in the sky. The number of beings that go from the higher realms to the higher realms are like atoms on a fingernail. And we see the number of beings that go from the lower realms to the higher realms are like atoms on a fingernail. And we see the beings that go from the lower realms to the lower realms are like atoms in the universe. So we can really understand how difficult it is for us to obtain this human life of leisure. And we know that this life is a life from which we can practice the Dharma. And if we think about this over and over and over again, and also add in our own ideas about gratitude, about this human basis, I'm able to serve, I'm able to, engage in this Dharma practice. I mean, I'm able to listen, I'm able to have all these things. When you look at the leisures and opportunities, think about it. I'm not born with wrong views where there's no conqueror's word. I'm not an animal, a hungry ghost, or a hell being, or a barbarian in a border region. I'm not, stupid and don't understand things, and I'm not a long life deity. All these things I could be in an hour, right? Because of recognizing that death can come and nothing can stop it, and the only thing that can help us is Dharma. And it's interesting that that's the next topic after an overview of the persons of three capacities. So we recognize that we have this opportunity. We have the 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities, or 10 fortunes, or 10 endowments, however you want to translate it. So then once Lama Tsongkhapa establishes for us that we should have this gratitude, then Lama Tsongkhapa even gives us more reasons to have gratitude. He says that here's what you can do with this human life of leisure and opportunity. You could practice teachings that could make you never have to have suffering in the lower realms again. So Lama Tsongkhapa said, these are called the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity. He said, you never have to suffer in the lower realms again. And, someone who believes in rebirth and has this in their mind and believes in the 6 realms of cyclic existence, this is a good idea to never have to be born in the lower realms again. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, from this basis, you can do that. Lama Tsongkhapa said, that's the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. Then Lama Tsongkhapa said, also, if you want, it's up to you, because these teachings are all made and kind of custom tailored for each and every individual differently. So if you feel this is neat, here's another thing you could do with this human life of leisure and opportunity. They're called the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And these teachings will show you how to get rid of all 6 realms of cyclic existence. We'll be able to make you achieve a state of nirvana, an abiding nirvana that has no suffering whatsoever, right? So Lama Tsongkhapa said, if that sounds good to you, if you're a person who, just wants to, for yourself alone, you may have heard of Buddhas. You're not going to be a Buddha, but you won't ever suffer again. If you're the kind of person that this is attractive to, these are called the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And then Lama Tsongkhapa says, finally, if you're the kind of person that wants the full deal, you want perfection, if you want to become a Buddha, from this basis of leisure and opportunity, you can do that too. And these are called the teachings for beings of great capacity. Not a huge amount of detail given in this section called the beings of 3 capacity, because of course Lama Tsongkhapa is going to go through all of these capacities in great detail in the Lam Rim later as we go through the text. But he kind of wants to give you a taste of who you can be, what you can do with this human life of leisure and opportunity. So you see the skill in that. And if you've gone through the Lam Rim before, then you're seeing, oh yeah, okay, so I see how these teachings work together. So why are they called in common? Why didn't Lama Tsongkhapa just say, oh, there's 3 steps for beings of great capacity? It was because of the individualizations of the path. Lama Tsongkhapa knew that all of these paths were pathways that would lead to Buddhahood, because all sentient beings will be a Buddha. It's so, you can debate it and you will logically land that all the teachings lead you to Buddhahood. There's one destination, and that's Buddhahood. But each individual needs what they need at that moment in order to move to the next step in their path to Buddhahood. And only an omniscient being knows what exact step that is. And you yourself in your own individual mind and continuum know where you're at also to some degree. Once you start to look at the Dharma, look in the mirror of the Dharma, it's kind of you and Buddha. The Buddha's omniscient. The Buddha knows your mind clearly. And you know your mind clearly, so you can fake whatever you want, but there is someone in the universe that knows you're doing it. It's not like some sort of Catholic guilt. I grew up in that kind of environment a little bit. It's not like that at all. But it's like, yeah, there's somebody definitely that knows your mind. So no matter how, much you think you're hiding your faults, it's actually a non-virtue, hiding your faults and pretending you don't have them, hiding your faults and acting like you only have good qualities to others. It's a non-virtue, but you're not hiding anything. An omniscient being, and plenty of them, infinite omniscient beings know exactly what you're up to. We really have to identify that and understand that. So Lama Tsongkhapa brings us through these stages in a very, very interesting way. And now he's given us a taste of what we can become from this human life of leisure and opportunity. Gives us an overview. And where did that come from? The root text of the Lam Rim Chemo, right? Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. Understand there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics, right? Rinpoche said that 1,000,000 times, over and over and over again. He used to start a lot of teachings. I would say 3/4 of the teachings, he'd start with that quote. And that quote is the entire basis of the path. That quote is the entire basis of the Lam Rim Chemo, the three capacities. There's nothing else. Tantrayana is in the great capacity, right? The highest yoga tantra, there's not, the first stage of guru devotion or relying on a teacher all the way to highest yoga tantra is in that quote by Lord Atisha. So Lama Tsongkhapa is just giving you a taste of something very vast. You have no idea it's so vast at this point if you're a beginner. You have no idea how huge the bomb Lama Tsongkhapa just dropped on you is. No idea at this beginning stage. After you go through it a couple times, you realize what those three capacities are and how they work with one another, and how if you don't realize guru devotion, you don't realize leisure and opportunity, and you don't realize death and impermanence, it's a dream. If you think you're going to be, have great compassion and, walk around and be a bodhisattva grows from renunciation. Renunciation grows from the wisdom of knowing what you need to renounce. We run around thinking happiness is good, and we don't even see that it's suffering. We don't think we need to renounce that. And when we think, oh, what does that mean to renounce that? We think, oh, we just won't eat chocolate. And we give it up. No. You're just onto something else contaminated. Or just like an intermediate, like some kind of bardo attachment between your chocolate and when you go back to your chocolate, or whatever it is you're going to, because it's all contaminated happiness. And it's not saying, oh, just give it all up. It's saying, understand it for what it is. People misunderstand that Fourth Noble Truth so much. I'm sure they stop wanting to hear the Zoom when they hear about the truth of suffering, because they think it's just this negative thing where now you walk around depressed. No. Now you're free. You have less depression when your world falls apart and you thought it was all going well, because you are intelligent now. You don't think everything's cotton candy and rainbows. The cotton candy and rainbows, are going to go away and somehow be a form of suffering. So you take comfort in knowing what's really going on, and comfort in the fact that you can get rid of this kind of happiness and find the one that you're really seeking. Because the whole time you're really seeking this infinite happiness. This mind is wanting happiness, just like all sentient beings want happiness. You're seeking it. You're just going about it in the wrong way. And as soon as you find out how wrong it is by understanding the suffering of change, the contaminated happiness, it's freedom. Because you stop doing what doesn't work, or stop thinking what doesn't work is going to work. You can enjoy things, but just don't believe in them. Don't take refuge in them. We take refuge in our attachments. When you start to understand the truth of suffering, you stop taking refuge in your attachments and you take refuge in the Buddha. because you can get rid of the contaminated happiness that turns into suffering and only have uncontaminated happiness all the time. So you feel great about that. You don't feel depressed about that. The truth of suffering is freedom. That's the first step to freedom. The truth of suffering and origin tell you why you're bound to something that doesn't work. Wouldn't you like to always have on your mind what isn't working? Or do you want to just keep in your mind thinking that all this stuff is working that's not? If you don't saturate your mind with the truth of suffering, there's no way you're going to be able to, start not believing in a reality that seems so real and reinforced by everyone around you. Everyone around you is reinforcing this. All your phone's reinforcing this reality. The television's reinforcing this reality. Science is even reinforcing this reality. And then when you look at this fancy, you start to look at quantum physics and quantum mechanics, you start to look at it in terms of the tenet systems of Buddhism. Catch up, guys. You're in like the Chittamantran view with this physics stuff. The Madhyamika view, the Prasangika view, it takes like 5 minutes. Who's somebody who understands Madhyamika Prasangika and someone who understands physics, Simo, the person can take the physics view and just put it into the lower school of Buddhism like that. So we take refuge in these false things in life that we think are so static and so real. And when we start to understand that those things aren't what we think, this should be freedom. Shouldn't be that, oh, I have the 8 types of suffering, birth, aging, sickness, and death, and so, meeting with the unpleasant, and, separating from the pleasant and not getting what I want, the appropriated aggregates. This is freedom, this knowledge, understanding that you have these things, and this will occur again, and the people around you have these things. This is knowing samsara. When we look at emptiness, we talk about the object of negation. What's the object of negation? Emptiness. It's not the self, it's the truly existent self, right? What's the object of negation that we should walk around with? Negating the idea that happiness that's contaminated works. And once we know it doesn't, we don't get let down as much. Somebody passes away, of course they did. I remember Rinpoche's relationship with death, relationship with all of those sorts of things. And it was amazing. He was very, very close. Imagine, being a refugee. Imagine, coming into a refugee camp with, your close confidants, only like 100 of you make it out together, and people start assembling in this prison camp. Imagine how close you are to these people. I mean, over 10 years, you live in Buxa, in this British prison camp. And then imagine then how close you become to the scholars if you're a scholar. So Rinpoche was so close with Geshe Gyatso, who was the abbot of Losaling. He's passed on. And so close with Geshe Lobsang Gompo. And so close with so many of these other, Khensa Pema Jetson, of course, his teacher, and Shako Gen Nima, both of which are reincarnated. He was so close with them. And, as I knew Rinpoche, they started to pass away before Rinpoche passed. And as they would pass away, his relationship with it was so matter of fact. Geshe Gompo passed, I saw a tear for sure. But his relationship with it was so matter of fact. It wasn't a long drawn out one. It was just a tear because Rinpoche really felt that Geshe Gompo made the wrong decision going back to India when he did. He used to say when he was here, he'd be with us now in the room with us if he hadn't gone back, right? His health was bad. And he went back to India for his students' sake because he didn't have enough students here and they were all calling him back. The reaction though that Rinpoche would have every time we'd give him his mala, for instance, his mala was given into him by Ken Rinpoche, the abbot of Losaling, who they were in, Buxa together and built Drepung together. And I'd hand it to him and he'd go, oh yeah, this was Gyatso's mala. He gave it to me. He's dead. And he'd just move on. He wouldn't say, it would just be so matter of fact. And then at the end of his life, when he looked at me and said, oh, Jeff, All of my teachers passed away too. They all died, just went about his business. It was just so matter of fact, right? And it's that kind of wisdom and knowledge that allows us to approach a situation. Now, even though devastated by Rinpoche's passing, even though, the most traumatic thing, in terms of emotion that's ever happened to me, my ability to contain myself at the most important time for Rinpoche, for me really, but you know what I mean, at the very end, was only because of the training that he had shown me, had shown that kind of stability and that ability to just face anything. I understood that he, walked out of Tibet with bombs dropping and went and lived in a prison camp, and then was able to say it was wonderful. What do you mean it was wonderful? Oh, I had so much time to focus on studies. Well, weren't the conditions bad? Yeah, my studies were good though. So different when these teachings affect your mind. And how does a being become like that? They study the life of leisure and opportunity that they have. They know the chance they have. They know the basis that they have. And they know after, next week we'll get to death and impermanence. They know that death will come, nothing can stop it. And the only thing that, we don't know when we're going to pass away. And the only thing that can help is Dharma. Right. We just watched that, I watched even when Rinpoche was at our home, two of the Goa-Kamsan elders pass away, one in Tibet and one in India, one who was my main helper in India when I was there. So we just see this impermanence. And these teachings are passing, and we too will do the same. And it's what we learned from them and what we applied to our lives that's going to matter at that time of death. All this other stuff, all these arguments, or all of these nice things that we want, or, oh, it'd be neat if I could, get the new cabinet or the new refrigerator, or, whatever, a guitar, or, it'd be really neat. But we start to see that what really, really helps us and what really changed these beings that we admire so much, that radiate this thing that we just don't seem to have, at least they didn't put stock in those things. They put stock in other things. And they put stock in this, and they came to that level by having faith and understanding this, by not putting faith in the next fun thing or the next attachment, by seeing that those things were bait, close the door of cyclic existence on us. And that understanding this basis is from something from which we could not take that bait, because we have enough intelligence and we have the teachings presented to us that show us how not to reach our hand out and grab the bait. So these great beings knew this, and not because they had magic done on them, because they studied this information and it became part of who they were. So this information should be part of who you are. You wake up in the morning and say, I have this human life. Wow, I have an opportunity. I could be a big grown up in the small, medium, or great scope. I could do all of it. I could do anything I want, right? You start to think about, you could have these, temporary happiness and certain goodness, right? You have happiness in the higher realms of cyclic existence, or you could have this real goodness of liberation and Buddhahood. And all of it's right in your fingertips, right in your hands when you wake up in the morning. And then the next thought you have is impermanence. It's in the order like this for a reason. Opportunity, urgency. It's almost like it was writing a PowerPoint. It's like, wonder, preliminaries, opportunity, urgency. And why it's urgent, it gets into karma. Urgency, you're going to die. Okay. And guess what? When you die, what's going to happen when you die, kids? Let's see what happens, right? And then it's like more urgency. So it's like, you know what I mean? Wonder, some preliminaries, gratitude, possibilities are endless, and then the urgency, and then more urgency. If we don't have that sense of urgency, Lama Tsongkhapa says in the end of the Lam Rim Chemo, none of this will work. You won't have any effort. You're not going to, you want to perfect effort if you don't feel like you need to definitely emerge from cyclic existence. You don't have a sense of urgency because you know you're going to die and you have something really good in your hands right now. You think you're going to have effort day and night to get out of cyclic existence. You think day and night you're going to take on the hardships of sentient beings. It's not going to happen. You'll take on the hardships of the ones that you want to, that are comfortable for you to do around you, and you'll take, you'll be psyched when you get a plaque or a certificate for having done it. But it won't be expansive. It won't do what a Buddha does. There'll be some sort of bias, and it won't really help us get out. Some of the generosity and the goodness and the helping we do will leave imprints, which will develop into goodness, but it'll be so saturated with ourselves and our self-cherishing attitude and our ego and our identity as helper that it becomes a mess. And when we realize the life of leisure and opportunity, and then we relate to someone else and say, you have that life of leisure and opportunity. But does that person have the conqueror's teaching, right? Have they, this stuff's in their world, but how much less leisure do they have than I have, right? That even grows more compassion. They have less leisure than I have, or at least they equally have no leisure, or they equally have leisure, right? They equally have opportunity. And what do they have the opportunity to do? To become a Buddha. So they equally have Buddha nature. We're equally important. They have leisure and opportunity. I have leisure and opportunity. They have a chance. They have just as good a chance as I have a chance because they have a human basis. I might start acting like a maniac because of my karma tomorrow morning, right? Some certain karma arises, some condition happens, and I suddenly can't control my mind or myself anymore. And they may tomorrow morning, having been in the state I'm experiencing today, yesterday, tomorrow morning, right? Or however that works, they may wake up and have an epiphany and have heard some Buddhist teachings when they were in college, right? Or something weird, right? Figure how have this some imprint, and they're like, wait, maybe I should look at Buddhism. And suddenly they look at the text and imprints from before rise up like out of nowhere and very forcefully. And then suddenly they're the reasonable person. And I'm the unreasonable person. Like really unreasonable. I don't mean like, oh, it's a projection. I mean, I literally go like off of my rocker. They were off of their rocker. And today I'm off my rocker, and now that today they're on their rocker. So, those things can happen. And we all have the same potential to become a Buddha. Milarepa, look at Milarepa's story. He engaged in black magic. His mother gave him some bad advice, asked him to get revenge. He killed a large number of people in his village because, things didn't go inheritance wise the way his mother thought they should have gone and the way he thought they should have gone. And after he did all of this cruel and evil stuff to an entire village, he was able to meet with the source of all of his good, Marpa. He was able to meet with Marpa Lotsawa and receive teachings and purify through the four opponent powers of a power of basis, regret, antidote, and commitment. And then engage in the practices of Mahamudra and so forth, and emptiness and the higher tantras. He was able to achieve Buddhahood in that very lifetime, even having been this horrible person who many people called enemy. He became the sole savior, the only reliable guide for those people he called enemy within that very lifetime. While many of them were still alive who resented and hated him, he was a Buddha and their only savior. So very interesting if you can make it all bigger, right? Look at Milarepa's story, right? And then make it bigger and start to understand how we have this life of leisure and opportunity, and see, well, what if we've been bad before? What if we were in prison before? Or what if the list goes on. We all think we're either the worst or the best. So, and they're both self-cherishing and both ego, no matter what we think, I doubt any one of us destroyed an entire village and killed, dozens and dozens of people with black magic. None of us probably did anything quite that terrible. And if we did, even the 5 heinous crimes, according to Lord Buddha, of killing our mother, killing our father, drawing blood from an arhat, killing an arhat, drawing blood from a Buddha, or dividing the Sangha, any of those 5 can be purified. So even if we've done worse than Milarepa, we have a chance because we have this human life of leisure and opportunity from which it's the ideal position to become Buddhas with. And we're listening to the Lam Rim Chemo right now. And we're listening to it in from an unbroken lineage. We're not listening to the Lam Rim Chemo with some ideas about the Lam Rim Chemo. We're listening to the Lam Rim Chemo with the facts that have been presented about the Lam Rim Chemo from Khenso Geshe Wandak using the Baso Chuchi Jetsun's commentary and Jayan Sheba's commentary and all of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's commentary and Panchen Sonandrapa's commentary, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're drawing from all of those great works. So we know we're relying on a Dharma that's accurate. So, it's so important that we keep checking that. We keep checking, is this an accurate Dharma? Is this a reliable Dharma? Is this Dharma changing my mind? Is this something that I'm applying? Do I know how to apply this Dharma? Do I know how to apply each and every one of these topics to my meditation? Do I know how this topic makes me become a Buddha? Do I know how if I don't practice this topic, I can't become a Buddha? Very, very interesting when you start to analyze things like that. And you tie them to that pole of your mind, and you think about that only, and you don't allow your mind to stray off those topics. And it's amazing if you start quickly firing questions at that topic in your mind through analysis, how you will find what you know about it and how much deeper and deeper you can go within that topic. And don't be shy. Use any commentaries you can. Use anything in your own life you can where you've seen that this opportunity being a human being, because we all have our kind of personal opportunities, like, oh yeah, I was able to meet with that person or able to meet with that person because I'm a human, right? So many people have changed our lives and given us the opportunity to be here right now. And we can see in our own meditation, when we're doing a gratitude meditation, we can think about those people that got us here, we're so grateful for, and why we could get here, why they could help us is because we were both humans together. We were humans at the same time with this life of leisure and opportunity, and we collided, and they somehow showed us how to take more advantage of it. So we've all met with those holy beings. I start to, close my eyes and think about my, since 1995, those beings before, but really my world, I read about Buddhism and it was like an earthquake happened. My whole life I was confused and couldn't figure out, questioned everything. And everyone told me not to question everything and that it was like a sin and stuff like that. And even really realized supposedly qualified PhD folk types, within certain religious traditions told me not to question anything. So I just walked around, just didn't know what to think and didn't know if I could question or anything. And I gave up on that, not seeking, and started to seek. And I looked into every religion but Buddhism and got to Buddhism. And it was like an atomic bomb went off in my mind. And it was so instantaneous that I know this idea of seeds ripening very quickly can happen. Because I looked into some very interesting philosophies before I got to Buddhism that my mind couldn't even wrap my head around. So, they could have intrigued me and I could have started chasing it, but they didn't. There was something about them, even though I wasn't able to pick it apart, that didn't intrigue me. But Buddhism, Four Noble Truths, first thing I read, and it was from a Zen perspective, blew my mind. And I saw how that seed could just explode. And I could emerge into somebody ready to be someone different. I guess that's the best way to say it, because it took, I've had a lot of trials and tribulations throughout this process, as anyone who's a human being who's truly honest with themselves and practicing will have and does have, unless you have this real special karma that allows you just to go straight line from, Buddhism on out. Usually karma and afflictions have another say in the matter. But the thing is you get them under more and more control and you have control of your mind, they don't. And I've seen that be so true in my path through Buddhism, that things that I certainly didn't feel would go away have. Things that I wished would, maybe have gone away quicker. Maybe I'm, still lingering. But we have to be patient with ourselves and be willing to look at it as a process. Be willing to understand that Buddha Shakyamuni was willing to get bodhicitta. So, first get bodhicitta. So how long does that take? Then he gets bodhicitta and then works for 3 countless eons to become a Buddha. And what's amazing is that we have Tantrayana, that Buddha Shakyamuni was so kind to express to us. The Buddha before Shakyamuni did not teach Tantrayana. The Buddha after Shakyamuni will not teach Tantrayana in an outward sense. There'll only be a few Buddhas that teach Tantrayana, and Buddha Shakyamuni is one of them. So why is this great? So Buddha Shakyamuni had to accumulate merit for 3 countless eons. So what Tantrayana allows us to do, if we understand emptiness and we're a Bodhisattva, is starting from that place as a Bodhisattva that would normally take 3 countless eons, Tantrayana allows us to compact our virtue, compress it. Robert Thurman calls it a time machine. It doesn't really mess with time. It messes with the potency of the moment. Does that make sense? So each moment, if you have 64 or 5 moments in a second, and if you have to accumulate virtue for 3 countless eons, if you can put 10 virtues in a moment instead of 1, at the end of 65, you have 650 virtues, right? Or 65. So now look at how much quicker, if you do math of 3 countless eons, if you just did it 10 times faster. That's just an example. This is how Tantrayana works. It allows our virtuous activities, because of the potency of our mind in our ability to convert very powerful negative emotions using that power of negativity. So when we look at the power of cherishing ourselves, right? Imagine if we cherished others that strong, right? Imagine if the power of our negativity could be turned into positivity that strong. It would have dynamite power. It would be an atomic bomb, moment to moment to moment. You'd be packing this compact, compressed virtue into every moment, as opposed to just clicking away at it. So we have this human basis in a time when Buddha Shakyamuni gave us, as Robert Thurman said, a time machine that can speed up our time it takes to become a Buddha. How does it speed it up? It compresses our virtue. How do we get to a place where we can know how to do that? How do we get to a place where we learn how to compress it at the introductory level of the action tantra, then a little bit more at performance tantra, then compress it even more at yogic tantra, then compress it in the greatest way of highest yoga tantra? How do we learn how to compress our virtues and make each moment so much more potent, like an atomic bomb? It doesn't just happen from our mind's side. We have to realize what we're learning right now. We have to realize these things that lead up to renunciation. So we definitely want to emerge. So we want others to emerge. So we then can shift our focus to others' needs. And then from that place where we are bodhisattvas and want to work for the sake of everyone, from that potency, we then take the potency of our negativities within, and we combine that virtue that wants to do everything for everyone, and that power, we can start to use our emotions, starting with, emotion that might come from the 4 levels of emotion that we play with in Tantrayana. The first level emotion that would be compared to if we see somebody that we're attracted to and we glance at them, right? And then the second level emotion that comes if they look back at us and smile, right? And then the next level of emotion that comes if we hold their hand. And then the next level of emotion that comes if we actually are intimate with that person in an intimate way. So we see these 3 levels of emotion, and just think about your mind just going through them. You see something attractive, and then they look at you and they're attracted to you, and then you held their hand and you feel it building up. Think about those times in your life, and then you actually, get to have that moment of intimacy. Imagine if the power of that you could turn towards helping others, right? Imagine how much virtue you could pack into every moment if you had that power and you weren't using it for what you were normally using it for in a diluted way. So that's enough about that. But Rinpoche spoke about this very openly. And you have to understand that meditation on this human life of leisure and opportunity, the 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities, allows you to achieve an illusory body. allows you to, leave this form like a snake shedding its skin, like in Kala Chakra, and become an enlightened being, to achieve the clear light mind at the time of death, allows us to do all of these different things. And you have to see that realizing human life of leisure and opportunity allows you to achieve a light body, allows you to achieve the 10th Bodhisattva ground, allows you to achieve the path of no more learning. So please don't throw these earlier topics away, and make sure that they make your life more forceful in terms of helping others, caring for others, loving others, and understanding the emptiness of all of it. So important. And that helps us with our ego. And when our pride and our ego gets too big, we need to think about all the things we don't know. Think about all the divisions of things we don't know. Think about all the things the Buddha knows that we don't know. So important that we use this in our daily life, and we apply these things to make our minds convert into the mind of a Buddha. We have the basis of the mind of a Buddha. So we just have to build, take some things out and add some things to this basis. And once we do that, we can end our suffering and have infinite happiness and be of the most use to everyone around us. So please look at it like that, and look at each of these topics as an opportunity to get closer to your goal, and an opportunity to know how to practice this in your daily lives. And you should think about these topics when you walk around and how they would apply. Does that person have leisure and opportunity? I do. And I look at this person as so much higher than me. At times, like people we find as our heroes, like even the president. Does the president have leisure and opportunity? Maybe not a great example during these times. not a good example across the board to use, but you know what I mean. Does a king or a queen, do they have this leisure and opportunity? They haven't maybe even read a book on Buddhism. Not saying that truth is truth. If you have truth, then it's truth. So like in the beginning of the Lam Rim, the quote that says, "I'm not attached to Buddha, and I don't dislike non-Buddhism. I'm really into truth." That's what I seek. So truth is truth. So that's what we're seeking, and we're seeking more and more truth and more transformation in our daily lives. So does anybody have any questions? And if not, we'll do the concluding prayers. And thank you so much for your patience with the technology at the beginning. But you have to figure, if we can't be patient with a little bit of technology, when somebody starts, and we're at a Buddhist teaching, we're like that meditator in the cave, that someone comes up to, he's been in isolation, and he's had his food and everything he's needed for quite some time. And then they come up to bring him his alms, more food a year later or whatever. And they knock on his door, and he screams at them, "What are you doing? You're disrupting me. Can't you see I'm meditating on patience?" So we don't want to be like that. We want to be able to be, flexible like a reed in the wind. We want to be able to be like that, and not so attached to this is how it should be, that's how it should be. If it's not like that, then I won't be happy. So anyway, let's do the concluding prayers, and let's try to approach this in a reasonable way, and not have too much expectation about where we'll go, but not have such little expectation about our spiritual aptitude that we just kind of blow it off. Okay, so the 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all, and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one whom I have benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectively take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena is like illusion, be released from the bondage of attachment. And we see here how Geshe Langri seals that dedication with emptiness, seeing all phenomena is like illusion. May we be released from the bondage of attachment. So you see that in there. Very important that we recognize when we're doing dedication that we seal it with this idea of the emptiness of action, agent, and object. So once again, visualize all of these empty gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of you that are so happy. We've just done a teaching. Rinpoche is so glad we're not straying off into some strange place now that he's passed on, that we're dealing exactly with the material that he wants us to deal with. He's so happy, and the Dalai Lama is so happy, and all these great beings are also happy. All sentient beings are all around us and so happy and rejoicing in this opportunity that we just had. And do as much of the visualization with the Om Home as you can, and just imagine that all sentient beings and yourself are so happy that we then make a mandala offering in thank you, and saying thank you for this teaching all the way back to the lineage. And thank you so much to all of you for making this possible. Everyone that's made this possible. So we're making this mandala offering of a perfect universe to all of these holy beings together with all sentient beings. So let's imagine that, and we'll go from there. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray that we may never be separated from Khensur Geshe Wandak in all of our lives. Whatever emanation he or she chooses to show us, may we meet with them, whether it's the emanation body in this kind of world, or it's the enjoyment body, because we're Arya Bodhisattvas and can have realized enough to meet with that being. May we never be separated until we achieve Buddhahood. And when we achieve Buddhahood, may we join hands with Khensur Geshe Wandak and help all sentient beings be free from suffering and to achieve bliss. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so wonderful that we did it again. And